All right, everyone, welcome back to the Crypto Market Rundown, where we talk about everything that's happening in the great world of crypto, from the fundamentals and the news to the technicals on the charts. We spend the time doing hours of research so that you all don't have to. And man, we got another action packed episode in store for all of you today. We have the crypto market consolidating while the supply of Bitcoin on exchanges is shrinking. We have very hot CPI and inflation data coming out affecting the crypto markets. We have Powell actually talking about cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, and so much more. We want to talk about some big updates that are happening in the altcoin market, specifically around Uniswap, Lido, and ETH DeFi. And of course, there was a big old meme coin that took over Super Bowl weekend that we got to talk about as well. So welcome back, everyone. It's good to have you here. We got tons of topics that we're looking forward to talking about. So all that we ask is that if you like the content that we make, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review if you're on a platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you want to see all the different video counterparts, all those articles and videos and charts that we reference on the screen, then you got to go over to our YouTube channel. It's the Crypto 101 podcast on YouTube. Check us out there, and that's where you're going to get all of the videos and articles that we're referencing on screen. So, yeah, I mean, man, with that being said, Tevo, how are things on your end? You're quite the traveler at the moment, and appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, man. Happy to be here as always, but don't ever say I don't love the Crypto 101 podcast family because 12 hours ago I was in Hawaii, took a red eye, landed in Salt Lake City, like an hour of sleep, couple cups of coffee here. And apologies for my sound not being as crispy. Don't have the mic on the road with me during this trip. But yeah, a lot to talk about, so didn't want to miss out. We're here and um, I've definitely noticed the podcast family's been growing. I know we've been doing our lives. We're not
Mhm.
live today because I'm on the road, so I think the connection is not good enough. But we've had that YouTube, the live family there chiming in. We had a bunch of comments coming in through Spotify. So shout out to JM Brew, Darren Moore, T_X. A lot of awesome stuff starting to, new people starting to flow in here with all the price action we've seen. So welcome to everybody new and old. And yeah, lots to cover today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's just go ahead and kick things off with price action, right? I mean, last week, for the past couple of weeks, we've come in here, we've had some sort of crazy situation happen over the weekend. The markets were gapping downwards. This week, and really like the whole past week, we saw just consolidation. We actually saw things mellow out for a bit. Bitcoin, altcoins, pretty much the entire crypto market seeing a little bit of a bleed to the downside, but no kind of crazy move. Again, we really kind of mellowed out from what we've seen in recent weeks. Just last week
Yo.
we saw Bitcoin bottom out at
Mhm.
91K, and then
Yeah.
the very same day end up as high as almost 103K. So we had this crazy, just like hundred around 11, $12,000 move, pushing back above 100K. And now what we're doing is we're in much more of a confined range, anywhere from maybe like 98K on the top end and around 94, 95K on the bottom end. But if we throw up the charts and we actually take a look at this, we can kind of see what's happening in a little bit more detail. So let's take a look at Bitcoin first. I mean, this is that range that I was talking about, and I'm going to zoom us in because we have the macro range, right? With around 110K as resistance, 90K as support. And then this is that much more closely knit range that we were talking about over the last week, coming out of a piece of volatility right in here. So we're continuing to just chop around from 90K to 110, from 90K to 110, then back to 90K. And that's kind of where we're closer to at the moment. And we came into last week's segment saying, hey, it's just punch after punch, black swan after black swan event. What is going to be the thing to push crypto below 90K? And I, excuse me, and I said, I don't know what it's going to be. I'm not sure if anything can. Well, now we're looking at it, and maybe the answer to that is economic uncertainty around inflation. This is something that we saw about 2 months ago, kind of peep its head in, and it caused some fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now we're seeing it come back around, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit later on in the episode. But you're noticing that 90K is being tested a lot more than 110K, right? I mean, we've tested this rough area around 108, 109,000 only twice, and we've tested 90K about 8 separate times over the last 3 to 4 months. The cool thing here is that 90K is held for a while. We have come in here November, December, January, now February, and we continue to bounce off of this. However, it is raising some concerns that maybe we are, really weakening this level because of how often and how frequent we're testing it. Are we wearing this support area out? And so I think that's something to keep an eye on, because any kind of a breakdown could certainly lead us probably a little bit closer back to maybe like probably a little bit closer back to maybe like 80 to 75K, which is just a little bit lower over here. So it's definitely something to keep on your mind. I think, so long as Bitcoin doesn't break below 90K with authority, you got to stay bullish. That is the primary support that is held for so long, and it's something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. Other big things here are, Bitcoin dominance being sky high. Last Monday, we saw this hit a new multi-year high. I believe that this was the highest point that we have seen since around January or February of 2021. So just again, multi-year highs for Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin tends to be outperforming the rest of the crypto market, and that's primarily coming through it just preserving value while altcoins continue to bleed. We can see that Ethereum over here slowly bleeding over the last week. Solana holding value, a little bit of bleed activity. Same sort of thing with XRP. And now what we're starting to see is that after that big move that we had to the downside over the course of early last week and last weekend, now we're starting to see a bit of consolidation in the altcoins. We're seeing a lot of them start to kind of hover around this area for the last maybe 4 or 5 days or so. And no matter what chart you're looking at, again, we're seeing kind of this little rounding bottom action. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on this for many of these altcoins as they continue to kind of, hopefully hold this level and find a nice little rounding bottom and are able to push higher. It's a big thing that we're looking for kind of moving forward. But, beyond that, there's not a ton of coins that saw any kind of a crazy move to the upside. We had the Barachain launch, which was, I believe, last Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday. And so it's been on the market for almost a week. It initially, and this isn't maybe the right chart to show this, but it initially pumped all the way up to around 15, 16, 17 bucks and then sold off, what was this? So like over 70, 75% to the downside. And now it's hovering back around $5. I know that this is something that I've been asked a lot of questions about. Again, we'll have to see what happens with this project. A little bit newer, but on a lot of people's radar, as now it is sitting right around a $500 million market cap, right around 5 to 600 million. The one outlier that I've noticed over here before I turn it back to you, Tevo, is, Mantra has kind of been shocking me. It's been leading the market in terms of performance. It's coming off of a new all-time high just under a week ago, last Friday. And that's not something that we're seeing from the vast majority of other altcoins. There are a couple of outliers here, I think, with like Cardano here seeing a nice little pump over the last couple days, and also with Litecoin being a little bit of a stronger performer in the last couple of days, both getting about a 30% pump. And if you measure from the bottom of the market that they had last week to the top of their move, it was around a 60% move from top to bottom, or from bottom to top. So definitely, there are outliers out there that are seeing some pretty nice price action. So I think altcoins are still worth paying attention to. But just looking at it from a risk versus reward standpoint, there is a little bit of more choppiness happening, maybe even a little bit more red in the market when it comes to the traditional altcoins, as opposed to some of these larger caps like Bitcoin and maybe even Solana, XRP, and a few others. So all things to kind of consider. I think, with all of this kind of going to the side, there was one clear winner over the weekend, and that comes from JailStool. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Tevo. I know that this one kind of hits home with you, and you got some history there.
Yeah. So for those who are newer to the show or don't know, because we don't talk about it a ton, I used to work at Barstool. So Dave Portnoy was my boss for several years. and awesome time there. Love Dave, love the company. And we've kind of all in the, I know Brian and Joe from our Momentum Moneymakers and our, who love the meme coins, have just been saying like, God, we want Dave to launch a meme coin. We know it'll run. We know it'll run. And he does a segment called Davey Day Trader, where it's kind of started out in stock market stuff and then bleeds into crypto and now meme coins and whatnot. And so over the weekend he learned how to trade meme coins. So his guy, I believe maybe Austin taught him or somebody on his team taught him how to, hop on, whether it was, Moonshot or Jupiter or Phantom Wallet. And he started, he started slinging meme coins. Then he learned the power of, whether you like it or not, he would tweet, a meme coin. I think one of the first ones he did was Josh Allen MVP. And he tweets it and then it rockets up 10,000%, whatever, and then he pulls the money out and he brags on Twitter that he just turned 5,000 into $80,000. So then everybody got mad at him for rugging, and he was barking back and forth at everybody. And so that was kind of day one. The summary of it was Dave was for better or worse kind of leading the charge on a couple of these meme coins and making profit. But like that's the name of the game. I don't think he's doing anything wrong. We've seen everything from what that clip of that 8-year-old rugging people on Pump.fun or whatever. So he was just having his fun, and obviously the meme coin market is the Wild West. So then the next day he goes and I think somebody sent him JailStool or his wallet. He stumbled across it and it made him laugh because it was a picture of him buying bars. And obviously insinuating like, you're going to go to jail for what you're doing with meme coins. And so he buys it and puts it, up like, jail. So he went the other route. Instead of just tweeting about it, he kind of, air quotes here, folks. So he backed the coin. He had nothing to do with creating it. He wasn't the developer or anything like that. He thought it was funny. And he basically said, he goes, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to hold it. And he kept his word. And so at that point, I know our Momentum Moneymaker guys, Brian was in on it. I was in on it. We were I was texting with Brian. I'm like, hey, did you see this? He's like, yeah, I'm looking into it. And I was like, all right, I was traveling, so I wasn't locked in as I wish I was, but I threw a little bit of money into it at like a penny. I think Brian gave out his alert at about an $80 million market cap, around a penny probably as well. And then it shot up, again, long story short, shot up to about 20 cents, which was about a $200 million market cap, I think. And Dave's making a ton of comments, tweeting about it. And then it did crash back down to earth. I think it's trading about 6 cents now. But pretty much a round trip for I think it went 20 back down to like 3. Now it's back up to 6. But an interesting thing. So Dave being behind something is an interesting thing, I think, in the meme coin game. First off, shout out to Momentum Moneymakers and Brian. We always had them on last couple of weeks and trying to promote them and their skill set. They nailed this one like they do so many others. But Dave is interesting to me because he's not like any other celebrity, I think, that I've seen do meme coins where, whether Hawk2 has made the number one example of somebody who isn't involved in it and probably getting led down a path by a group of people, or somebody like maybe Jason Derulo who's just kind of doing it to rug people or for the money. Like Dave, whenever Dave does something, like he's really involved because he's so smart with how he handles his brand, his business, and his content. Like he's really, really involved. And so if he was to ever create his own meme coin and launch it, and he's talked about doing that as well, he would be really involved with it. And then with this JailStool thing, he's basically done exactly what he said. And now he's, because he's a genius of the content game, he's turned this JailStool into content. Like he, at one point, I think when it was up to 20 cents, I don't know how much he put in. I think he put in $100,000. Don't quote me on this, but he put $100,000, and I know it went up at some point. It was 6 million. He was like 6 million in profit. And he took over Super Bowl weekend. He won Super Bowl weekend. As Dave Portnoy does a lot of times, he wins Super Bowl weekend. But he won Super Bowl weekend, and all he's saying is, I'm not gonna sell. I'm not selling until this thing hits, maybe 500, maybe $1 billion. And then I think he switched recently to be like, never mind, I'm not selling until it's $1 billion. And if it gets to 2 billion, I'm going to throw a yacht party for all the holders. He's pulling like a Michael Saylor type thing. So he's all invested in the content. And I as somebody, never personal financial advice, but I believe him when he says that. I don't think he would go against his word. Number one, because it's not the right thing to do. And I think he has, a sense of that. But number two, it's great content for him. So he's winning either way.
Mhm.
Like the $6 million to him is, yeah, $6 million is a lot of money probably to anybody. But at the same time, this is a guy that's throwing $1 million bets on Super Bowls and individual games. So, Dave Portnoy's got plenty of money. So I think he's involved. He really likes the space. So it's something to track. And
Yeah.
I pulled like a 1 minute clip. I'm gonna cut it down 20 seconds here, and I'm gonna play it. But he was making good points. He was saying, when I was winning, you all were mad at me and yelling at me that I rugged, and now I'm telling you I'm not gonna sell. And I held up my version of it. So then why is the coin price going down? Why are you guys selling? I thought we were all going to the moon together. And he's trying to prove this point that everybody's out here just trading, trying to get their money. And if he's not going to rug somebody, somebody else is, which is probably the truth. So let's check in
Yeah.
Dave. If you don't know Dave, he's very animated, very entertaining. But let's check in on Dave about JailStool.
What did I tank again, Koi fan? I don't tank anything. What did I tank? I'll go look. Bro's like, bro tanked it. What did I possibly? This is why I don't like it. What could I possibly tank? I've been the most. That's why I get mad at the trenches. You guys are just buying and selling news instead of being fucking holders. If you're an actual believer in JailStool, I am saying the most positive shit you could possibly say. It did tank. This is crazy. I'm sitting here saying I will never turn my back on JailStool. $100,000 for JailStool commercial. Fuck it. Next time I'm on fucking Varney on Fox, which I'm on all the time, I'll say fucking JailStool. Like, you fucking idiots. You want me to abandon it. I won't. I won't let you win. The people who are selling, I won't do it. Wrap it.
He's all in. He's all
Legendary.
in. Yeah, he's in the trenches on JailStool. I'm like, he keeps buying more, which is fascinating. He keeps buying the dips. They put up a T-shirt and sweatshirt for sale. I believe he said all the profits to that. He's going to get all the profits, after the cost of the sweatshirts and dump it all into JailStool. So I think it's a fascinating case study and something to watch, as we've seen this meme coin market take off and grow, and what makes something like Chill Guy pop off, or, Fart Coin and whatnot. They all have like a story behind it in some way. And this is, in my opinion, one of the godfathers of internet entertainment. Like, I don't think you could really tell the story of social media without talking about Dave Portnoy. That's my opinion. Obviously, I have a little bias, but yeah, it's something that we're gonna keep watching here and stay apprised to, because I think it's an interesting development to now get him in the trenches and see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, the meme coin space just continues to grow. And there's always something going on over there. There's always something going on in the meme coin space. So I think it's something to watch, listening closely to. And, who knows? You're just, one opportunity away from a crazy story like that one. But, kind of transitioning things over to the traditional side, what we've seen here recently is a big shift in ETF applications. There's now a handful of new ones that are coming out. We're starting to see Dogecoin applications, Litecoin applications, and Cardano applications. I believe primarily from Grayscale. But upon this news, the likelihood of getting these Cardano and Litecoin ETFs approved are rising. And I saw our buddies over at Bloomberg Intelligence actually saying that Litecoin has as high as a 90% chance of approval. XRP sitting at around 65%. I've seen people say Cardano is around 80 to 90%. And they're even saying that a Dogecoin ETF is as high as 75%. So we have all these altcoin ETFs that are floating around out there, obviously off of this news. Litecoin and Cardano are crushing it. We've already kind of factored in the news for Solana and XRP, right? We've known that they've been kind of at the forefront of the ETF game for a while now, so those aren't seeing any kind of crazy move to the upside. But here we are, kind of looking on to the rest of this year, saying, hey, there could be a number of altcoin ETFs coming our way. And it looks like the top 5 contenders for that is going to be Litecoin, Cardano, XRP, Solana, and potentially even Dogecoin in no specific order there. So, yeah, I mean, something to definitely track. You know, we know what kind of a catalyst that this has been in previous runs. You know, looking at Bitcoin, looking at Ethereum, they tend to have kind of a big pump up until the actual event. Then after the event, they tend to get a little bit of a pullback and maybe see some downside. But, you know, who knows? I think either way, we're going to see some volatility coming out from this kind of news. And I think it's just another thing for the average person to keep an eye on if you haven't been watching this already. The other big thing here, Tevo, is that, you know, and we used to talk about this a lot, and we haven't circled back to it in a while, which is why I'm glad that we're touching base this episode. But Bitcoin's supply here, specifically Bitcoin's supply on exchanges, is and has been shrinking for quite some time. So if we go ahead and, you know, I'll throw this up on my end, but if we go ahead and we actually take a look at this, we can see that it's actually pretty shocking. So here we are. We have Bitcoin's exchange reserves, or Bitcoin's just supply on exchanges. And if you go back to 2022 over here, I mean, it has been falling and falling and falling. Over here, it was as high as around 3.5 million for the total reserves. And what have we seen? Well, in 2022, it fell. In 2023, a lot of sideways action, but again, kind of going down. 2024, continuing to fall down. 2025, it's plummeting at this point, all the way down to around 2.5 million. So what does this mean? What does it mean to have Bitcoin's exchange reserves and supply on exchanges shrinking? Well, this means that it is becoming more rare. There are less and less Bitcoin essentially in the supply. And as the supply shrinks and demand grows, we have to think about the most fundamental basic law of economics, which is supply and demand. So if we have a shrinking supply and a growing demand, that ultimately has a positive impact on price, right? Because if the supply is shrinking, but, you know, the same or maybe even more people want to get their hands on it, well, then it has to appreciate in value because of this principle. So, you know, no matter kind of how we look at this chart, Bitcoin's reserves are shrinking. Not only is this becoming harder to get your hands on in terms of the halvening or, you know, all these other factors. If we're just looking at the exchange reserves, it's showing us this as well. So Bitcoin is becoming harder to mine. It's becoming more rare on exchanges. We know that a lot of Bitcoin has been removed from the supply, put into the ETFs. That's gobbling a lot of long-term market share. And no matter which way you look at this, again, Bitcoin is becoming more rare over here, and you have to imagine that that is going to have a positive impact on price. So it's something that I'm keeping a pretty close eye on over here. And I saw an article that we can probably even throw on the screen that just briefly talks about it. But they're saying the same thing. They're saying, hey, there's only 2.5 million Bitcoin left on crypto exchanges. This could signal a supply shock. And this is the lowest that we've seen in years on exchanges. So they're looking at this saying, hey, this could cause a supply shock. If this trend continues for another 2 years, I mean, imagine this continues. And in 2022, we saw it at 3.5 million. You know, well, what if, 2-3 years from now, it's at 1.5 million, 1 million? Well, I think that if that happens, then price essentially has to move up as it gets more rare, and there's just going to be less and less people selling. So, yeah, I mean, it's all fascinating. It's all pretty interesting. You know, they have a pretty cool article over here from Cointelegraph that talks about this, and they show some other charts and, you know, how this has impacted the price. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. It is fascinating, and if this continues to shrink, it gets me excited as a holder.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. Just two things that came to mind that I don't have the answers to right now, but I'd be interested to learn them. If you have a thought on it or research into it, would be with the ETFs. kind of looking into in-kind redemption, meaning that
Yeah.
if you have the ETF, you could actually trade that in for real Bitcoin, meaning that the ETF holders would have to have kind of a one-for-one count of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that the banks are trying to be holders of Bitcoin, which means that, somebody that would that lead to more Bitcoin coming off the exchanges, because a person who has, a couple Bitcoin, but maybe they don't feel totally comfortable with a wallet, right? They're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to, keep, $500,000 with a passcode that I might lose, but they might want to put it in their bank instead of keeping it on their exchange. So then that stuff starts to flow off of the exchanges. That was something that came to my head, that thought, with the new regulation, it might lead to even more Bitcoin coming off of exchanges.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that if banks get their hands on it, again, I I can't imagine them being short-term holders. So they're going to be long-term holders, and if people are allowed to exchange their Bitcoin for maybe ETF shares, I think that that could be another really cool thing. I personally would like that. I'm a trader. I like to do all sorts of cool stuff. If I have the option to exchange some Bitcoin and then maybe sell calls and sell puts and create options on my shares, like I think that that increases liquidity and it increases trading activity, and it could ultimately be a pretty cool thing for all investors. So I'd be happy to see both personally, and especially the bank front, I think would just continue to contribute to what we're already seeing in terms of the supply shrinking.
Yeah, no, bullish stuff. And then uh kind of some in the news today was some CPI. CPI
Mm,
news came out on inflation, and sadly running a little hotter than expected. So whatever the estimates were, let's see, do we have them? Pull it up. Yeah, so
yeah,
the estimate was hotter, so jumped 0.5% in 1 month. That's the largest increase since August 2023. I know the futures market really didn't like that, at least in stock market wise, right? So,
yeah,
a little bit of a nasty red open, but Bitcoin holding, like we showed you the charts earlier, Bitcoin holding strong. Um, People are buying gold at record levels. Obviously, Bitcoin's had a hell of a year, hell of a multi-year run. And there's this constant debate of like, all right, is this a true hedge of inflation? Is it a future technology? It kind of embrace debate on, whether it's both or what side of the spectrum you stand on when it comes to Bitcoin. But a lot of people do consider risk assets. So, if inflation's higher, risk assets tend to go down. Like, on this type of news, you'll see your, I guess, semiconductors and supercomputer, those supercomputer stocks that, had a crazy run into the end of the beginning of the year are going to go down. But, yeah, crypto as a whole kind of had I feel like it's holding up pretty strong in these numbers. And again, this was just released, Wednesday morning. So, I guess there's still time to digest it. But, what are your thoughts on the inflation read here, Brendan?
yeah. I mean, it's definitely coming in hotter than expected, which throws a wrench into a lot of things, right? The new administration has been very adamant that they want rates to go down, but if inflation is coming in hotter than expected, it kind of counteracts that. Upon seeing this news and it coming in hotter, we saw, you're right, the risk market sell off. The futures all sold off pretty steeply, over 1%. We saw crypto also take a bit of a tumble when this happened. Bitcoin breaking below $95,000, and this really stems from the idea that the Fed's goal here is 2%. So if we're going in the wrong direction, uh, that might make them a little bit more hawkish. That might make them a little bit more concerned and firm with their stance. And I think that's what people are scared about. Now, ultimately, we've already started recovering here. It's nothing too crazy in terms of the numbers either way. Again, not what we were expecting or maybe even looking forward to. But with inflation, kind of getting to the point where it is now, we saw the DXY, or the US dollar currency index, climbing this morning. We also saw the 10-year yields also climbing back to the upside. And so that was causing a lot of these risk assets to fall here. So, I mean, I don't think this is anything too crazy. Again, I've said this before, Tevo. I don't think an inflation rate of 3% is awful. Now, obviously we're pushing up a little bit here. We never want to see that trend shift back to the upside. But the Fed has this adamant stance that it's going to get down to a 2.0, and we'll see. We'll see. Again, do we want inflation high? No, but is 3.1, 3.3% awful? Also no, especially not when we're coming off 10%, which is absurdly high. Coming back down to a norm of the low to mid 3% range just isn't awful in today's world. And I know that maybe there's boomers out there that are saying 3% is ridiculous. I'm just saying, after everything that we've gone through, a mid to low 3% inflation rate really isn't awful. Now, can we work on that over time? Yeah, but I don't think a 2% inflation rate is something that we're just going to get overnight unless something drastic happens. Unless, whether it's the Fed or something else does something insane. I think a 2% inflation goal is great to have in theory, but I think it's practically a lot harder to get to than either the Fed's making it out to be or people make it out to be. I think it's a lofty goal. It's like saying, hey, can Bitcoin reach $1 million before the end of this year? Yeah, it's possible. There's catalysts that are there. Maybe we can do some of the right things to kind of put us in that position. But, is that a lofty goal still to get Bitcoin to $1 million before the end of the year? Yeah, it's a lofty goal. And I think the 2% inflation rate is also a pretty freaking lofty goal for the Fed to get anytime soon. So
Yeah.
that's the way that I look at this.
Yeah, I got a couple stats here for you. Stats, and then I guess maybe an opinion, but stats first. So, a reason to not maybe be as concerned about inflation as a whole is, and this, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but the three largest drivers of inflation since 2019 are shelter. Number one is shelter. Number two is auto insurance. Number three is used new cars. So that's 60% of the overall CPI basket. And, shelter is not necessarily going to fall like a rock by any means, but I think interest rates where they are, especially the 10-year, is going to hold that. And, obviously used cars specifically and new cars, coming out of the pandemic was just a supply chain issue for that type of inflation. So that should be kind of coming down as well over time. And then I guess, so that's one reason that I think, you just got to let it's time, right? It's got to work out the system. It's got to flush out the system. The second thing I think is kind of politically. So, you have all these people on the Fed and, whether it's, the University of Michigan survey, which is like an economic survey about inflation. There's obviously a lot of opinions. And I think that, you kind of got to block out the noise and just read the data. So today is an example of a data point, and it might not be the data point you want when looking at inflation. But now you're going to have a bunch of people spouting opinions off, and a lot of those opinions might be fueled politically, whether they like Trump or whether they don't like Trump. Democrat or Republican. If you're a Republican, you're saying, oh, this isn't our fault. We got to, work harder. Is the data this, data that, and they're going to spin it how they want to. And then if you're a Democrat and you don't like Trump, you're going to say, oh, this is a disaster. Inflation's coming back, and Trump's an inflationary president, and the tariffs are going to cause more inflation. So there's just going to be a lot of noise around it. I think either way, overreaction to the downside or overreaction to the upside when it comes to market pricing is probably something that, if that happens, the market's not usually totally right. So something to keep an eye out for if there's any crazy downward movement on this type of data. But I think it's an important point to kind of stick to the data points and realize that a lot of the talky heads that you're going to see talk about this type of stuff have their own political angle on how they kind of phrase it.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It's definitely worth paying attention to, and there's all sorts of factors that go into this. So we're going to continue to cover it. We got a lot more CPI reports that are going to come out this year. So we'll continue to pay close attention to it and how that affects the crypto markets. But in the meantime, what we've seen here, Tevo, is a big shift when it comes to projects and updates that they're putting out, right? We started to notice that the regulatory environment was easing. And that's something that we were expecting. It's a much more pro-crypto administration here in the States. And because of this, we're starting to see projects come out and do stuff that they didn't previously do, whether they weren't able to do that or they didn't want to put out those updates. We don't know exactly, but now, I don't think it's coincidence that all these big crypto foundations and projects are putting out all these big new updates, all of a sudden, right? The two ones here that are happening this week, or rather just happened, is on the Uniswap side of things. Uniswap launched their own chain called Unichain, and this is a big debut. And I saw analysts talking about how this thing could be a huge factor when it comes to Ethereum as a chain, and what kind of activity increases this could ultimately cause to kind of happen. The other side is that we also have Lido, one of the biggest staking based projects that's out there. They focus on liquid staking derivatives and making staking to a number of different chains, but primarily Ethereum, a lot easier for the individual. So both of these involved with ETH DeFi, and under the kind of regulatory easing that we've been seeing, they're both saying, hey, we're going to pump out these new updates. We're going to pump out new features. We're going to have all of this new stuff available that we haven't done before. And Lido's focusing a little bit more here on the institutional side, and even trying to grow an institutional audience with the Lido V3 update that's happening over here. So, there's a lot of big things. I mean, people have talked about profit sharing and all these other things happening inside of the Uniswap ecosystem and a lot of these other DeFi focused projects. And I think what we're seeing is just the first stages of a bigger shift where we're going to get all sorts of updates. And we were just talking about how Avalanche 9000 is having a big update. We were just talking with I think it was the Say team, and how they were going to make some big updates. I mean, all these projects now are pumping out these big, huge updates. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think what we're going to see here is a continuation of this. I think projects are now going to be able to do things that they've never done before. And I think that there's going to be a lot more innovation just because people aren't as afraid of the SEC as they used to be, which, again, as a crypto native, I like that. I like to have new kinds of innovation. Again, are some things going to go wrong? Are there going to be some bad things that happen? Yes. But, we see that happen in all stages. You can't look at Silicon Valley Bank going under and being like, oh, we got to step back and we can't get innovative anymore and we have to place more restrictions. You can't look at the 2008 housing crisis and say, oh, we got to reinvent, certain parts of the system. In growth phases, unfortunately, there are bad actors. There are bad things that happen. The thing here is that, hopefully we can benefit coming out of the .com bubble with a completely new way of looking at the entire industry. And that's what we do. You look at the internet today after the .com bubble, it's a different world. And hopefully we can kind of look back, 10, 20 years from now, and, the whole crypto and blockchain world has forever changed as well because of what we can see here over the next couple of years. So lots of things to keep an eye on. Lots of new projects that are kicking things, or existing and new projects that are kicking things off hot. The last thing that I want to leave everyone with is that we got a big note from Jerome Powell, our good old buddy Jay Powell, that we've referenced a lot here in this episode. But Jay Powell was talking about CBDCs and kind of the general crypto space here in recent days. And he was just asked, I believe yesterday, on February 11th of 2025, if the U.S. will ever consider having a central bank digital currency. And we got a clip for everyone that we want to go ahead and run. So let's go ahead and run that. I think it's 20 seconds long.
Something that concerns me a lot is the idea that we would even look like China in any way. So can I have your commitment that as long as you're the chairman of the Federal Reserve System, that we will never have a central bank digital currency?
Yes.
Thank you for that. I think that's extremely important. It makes me very happy to hear you say that.
And that's a win for crypto enthusiasts around the world. That's been a big fear for people, is hey, could we do this? Could we not do this? What does that mean for freedom and other things? And with him coming out and just saying, we are not doing this, very plainly saying, will you do this? can you promise us that you won't do this? And he just gives a flat answer of yes, which is pretty rare to get in politics, right? You usually get these big work around answers of like, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. And they leave it open-ended, but this was just a very simple one-word yes. You don't have to worry about this happening. So I view it as a positive here, Tevo. And again, I'm stoked. I'm stoked for what we have in the future. Again, are we seeing some choppy price action here? Yes. But looking at the bigger picture, I don't know how you can't be excited when you're looking at all these catalysts. Again, the number of positive catalysts here so greatly outweigh the negative ones that it's hard to come in and be a massive bear.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add another cherry on top for the people. Again, another thing from our friend Jerome Powell. I had just had Twitter on in the background, like on one of my monitors when we were recording, and see, he's testifying today. So that what we just played for you was day one of him testifying. Today's day two. So this just dropped like 20 minutes ago. I pulled it, and it's him talking about banks being able to serve crypto. So let's see what I haven't even listened to it. So let's see what Jay Powell just said, hot off the wire here.
Yes. So first, I would say there are really two things that are happening. One is banks are serving crypto customers. And we don't want to get in the way of banks serving perfectly legal customers as long as they understand the risks and that sort of thing. We don't want to single out any particular.
Are you speaking to custody?
Well, custody is more, the second thing is
Right.
undertaking activities
Okay.
on their own, right? And in that case, I do think it's appropriate to as usual, as bank supervisors, make sure that we understand and banks understand the risks that are involved in the activity that they're taking inside an insured depository. On the other hand, you don't want to go too far. I think there were a bunch of disasters, as we all remember, and we don't want to, and we were reacting to some extent to those. You don't want to go so far as to overplay your hand on that. So I think we need to be mindful that many of these activities can very well be done inside of banks, and custody may well be one of them. In fact, in Fed-regulated banks, there are lots of crypto activities happening now. They've just happened under a framework where we made sure that the bank understood and we understood exactly what they're doing.
So yeah, I mean, it looks all positive to me. They're saying, hey, we don't want to get in the way of banks dealing with cryptocurrencies. It's a legal asset. This is their right. Let them do it. And he's saying, hey, we want to be smart about it, right? We want to do it right, which I think is okay, right? We don't want another FTX happening. So we want to protect against that. But I think allowing banks to work with these assets and allowing people to go through banks to get access to them, I'm all for it. Increase exposure.
Yeah, dude, really interesting. Sounded very confident on those answers. Like he actually, had the thought and thought them out. So again, I think a point you nailed a couple minutes ago was there's a huge discrepancy right now between traders and builders. And if you kind of take the builder side of it, who are exciting and launching new updates, and then you have the basically the SEC and now the legal side behind crypto, which has never been done before. That's two checks for being excited and being bullish about the industry, whereas traders think with what they look on their account balance, and the overwhelming majority definitely thought Trump's in, number go up. Altcoin season comes now, and they've been obviously we've all felt it a little bit, like a little bit of a tease. Definitely for the last year, since last February, everybody's been kind of chomping at the bit to get a true alt season going. But we got to zoom out and see the bigger picture, and I don't know. I think we both agree that the bigger picture looks bright, and the future looks bright and positive.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, there's lots of things to look forward to in the remainder of this year. So we're going to continue to report on it. We're going to continue to keep everyone in the loop. And again, if you like the content that we put out there, completely free, putting together a list of everything that's happening in the world of crypto every single week and presenting it to you in ideally under an hour in most episodes, then all that we ask here is that you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, you give us a follow, and you check out maybe some of our other socials if you really, really like it. On YouTube, We've got a great place where you can go over and find all sorts of tutorials and podcasts and rundowns and you name it. We're talking about everything that's happening in the market over there. We have videos coming out almost every single day. We have shorts that you can watch all completely for free. And if you want to get plugged into a much deeper crypto community, we have that available over here at Crypt Nation, where you can join a community of thousands of like-minded individuals, bounce your ideas, what interests you, trades, you name it, and get feedback and talk to other people who are like-minded. So there's a lot of great stuff that we have going on over here. We hope that all of you join us. We hope to see all of you again next week. But in the meantime, stay safe out there, happy trading, and we'll see all of you at the same time, same place next week.